Hello, and welcome to the Nodysseus UI Overview video. In this video, I'll explain the various parts of the UI and how you interact with them. To begin, we have the main node graph viewer, which shows the current open graph. It's like a source file or document. The last node of the graph is the output node, similar to a return statement or the final result of a math equation. In the bottom left is the display section. It displays what's connected to the output node along the edge named display. In this graph, it's showing the HTML text Hello World. In the top right, there's a Find button. When you search for text here, it'll take you to the most relevant node. Pressing Enter or Shift Enter cycles through the nodes it finds. Pressing Escape or clicking the graph hides the window. Finally, there's the Node Info pop-up. This is where the functionality of the node can be changed. Let's look at the node graph. Each node has two text lines. The top line shows the name or value of an element. The second line shows its ref or reference graph. I can change the name of a node to make it easier to find or understand later. Changing the reference graph changes the function of the node, so I'll leave that alone for now. This node references the HTML element graph, and its parent above references the HTML text graph. If a node doesn't have a name, then its value will be shown in the first line. The line connecting two nodes is an edge. It has an input node, an output node, and a name. The edge name can be changed on the Node Info pop-up of the input node. Clicking the plus icon on an edge will insert a node in between the edge's input and output nodes. The Node Info pop-up lets you change the functionality of a node. The first section has all of the arguments to the reference graph. These are like named parameters for a JavaScript function. HTML element from the wonderful HyperApp library has children, props, DOM type, and some more. Clicking an argument will create a new node for that argument with a named edge if one doesn't exist already. If the named edge does exist already, then clicking will take you to the named edge's input node. You can set the value, name, reference graph, and edge name of a node. If a node has no reference graph, then it will output its value. For example, we can change this node's value from Hello World to Hello to change the display in the bottom left. The value of a node that references another graph will sometimes replace a specific parameter. For example, on the slider node, it replaces the label input. Below the attributes is a space for a node's custom view. For example, the slider has a slider here. As we saw before, the name attribute is primarily for labeling nodes, but on the graph's output node, it behaves slightly differently. Changing the name here opens up another graph. Whoops, this graph has an error. In the top left, you can see where the errors are displayed, and you'll notice that the erroring node turns red. Let's go back to the tutorial graph. Changing a node's reference graph changes its functionality to what that graph does. You can see a list of all the available graphs to reference, including graphs that you've saved before. For now, we'll keep it an HTML element. At the bottom of the Node Info pop-up, there are actions. You can collapse a node and all of its ancestors above it into a node graph, or expand a collapsed node graph. There's a copy action to copy a node and its ancestors, and then you can paste it elsewhere in the graph or in another graph entirely. Delete deletes a node and connects that node's input to the node's output. On the graph's output node, there is a save action, which saves the graph in your browser and allows it to be used as a reference graph for nodes. That wraps up this video. Thanks for watching, and check out the other Nodysseus tutorials.